Al-Qaeda is one of the most consequential militant organizations of the modern era. It is a Sunni Islamist jihadist group that presented itself as a revolutionary vanguard, claiming its mission was to unite Muslims under a transnational Islamic caliphate. In practice, it became known worldwide for mass casualty attacks against civilians and military targets, especially those connected to the United States and its allies. The group has been designated a terrorist organization by the United Nations and by many governments around the world. Understanding Al-Qaeda is not simply about one organization or one leader. It is also about the aftermath of war in Afghanistan, the politics of the Middle East, the growth of transnational militant networks, and the global security changes that followed the September 11 attacks. The roots of Al-Qaeda lie in the Soviet-Afghan War, which lasted through the 1980s and drew foreign Muslim volunteers to Afghanistan. These volunteers were part of a broader anti-Soviet struggle supported by regional and international actors for different strategic reasons. Among the figures involved were Abdullah Yusuf Azzam, Osama bin Laden, Mohammed Atef, and Ayman al-Zawahiri. Networks developed to move money, people, and supplies into the conflict zone. One of the most important was Maktab al-Khidmat, often translated as the Services Bureau. After the war, some veterans wanted to preserve these networks and redirect them toward a broader ideological mission. In meetings held in Peshawar in 1988, this idea developed into what became Al-Qaeda, meaning the base. Al-Qaeda's founders saw themselves as more than former fighters from a single battlefield. They believed they were building a permanent organization that could mobilize jihad across national borders. This was central to the group's identity. It rejected the idea that politics should be organized around modern nation-states, and instead promoted a supranational vision of Islamic rule. Its membership was primarily Arab, but the organization also drew people from other ethnic and regional backgrounds. The group's ideology combined militant interpretations of religion with a political worldview that framed existing Muslim governments, Western influence, and secular laws as illegitimate. From the beginning, Al-Qaeda's leadership presented violence not as a temporary wartime measure, but as a tool for reshaping the political order. A major turning point came in 1990, when Iraq invaded Kuwait. Osama bin Laden offered to help defend Saudi Arabia by sending fighters who had experience from Afghanistan. The Saudi government rejected his offer and instead accepted military support from the United States and other coalition partners. For bin Laden, the presence of U.S. troops in the Arabian Peninsula became a defining grievance. He denounced the Saudi rulers as apostates and increasingly directed Al-Qaeda's hostility toward both local governments and the United States. This moment helped transform Al-Qaeda's focus from post-Afghan war organizing into a more explicit campaign against what it described as American domination of Muslim lands. During the early 1990s, Al-Qaeda relocated its headquarters to Sudan. There, the organization attempted to build infrastructure, maintain contacts, and expand its influence. Sudan offered space for the group to operate for several years, but international pressure mounted. By 1996, Al-Qaeda was expelled and shifted its base to Afghanistan, which soon came under Taliban control. Afghanistan became crucial because it offered relative protection, training space, and a sympathetic governing authority. From there, Al-Qaeda expanded its reach into parts of the Middle East, South Asia, and beyond. This period also saw bin Laden issue public religious and political declarations, including statements in 1996 and 1998 demanding the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Saudi Arabia. Al-Qaeda's worldview depended on a narrative of global confrontation. Its members claimed that a Judeo-Christian alliance led by the United States was waging war against Islam. This belief was used to justify attacks far beyond conventional battlefields. The organization rejected man-made laws and sought to impose its interpretation of Sharia in Muslim countries. It also called for the removal of foreign and secular influences, which it described as corrupt deviations. These ideas made Al-Qaeda dangerous not only because it was willing to use violence, but because it framed civilians, governments, and institutions as legitimate targets within a sweeping ideological struggle. That logic helped enable attacks designed to create maximum political and psychological shock. In 1998, Al-Qaeda carried out coordinated bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. The attacks killed 224 people and injured thousands, many of them local civilians. For many observers, this was the moment Al-Qaeda moved from being a relatively obscure militant network to a major international security threat. The United States responded with Operation Infinite Reach, launching strikes against targets in Afghanistan and Sudan. But the organization remained intact. The embassy bombings revealed several key features of Al-Qaeda's strategy: symbolic targets, international coordination, and a willingness to cause mass civilian casualties. They also demonstrated the difficulty governments faced in disrupting a network spread across borders. On September 11, 2001, Al-Qaeda carried out the attacks that defined its place in world history. Nearly 3,000 people were killed when hijacked planes struck the World Trade Center in New York, the Pentagon near Washington, D.C., and a fourth plane crashed in Pennsylvania after passengers resisted the hijackers. The human cost extended far beyond that day, including long-term health consequences for first responders, survivors, and residents exposed to toxic dust and trauma. The attacks also shook global markets, transformed aviation security, and deeply affected culture, politics, and public life around the world. More than any other event, September 11 turned Al-Qaeda into the central focus of a new era of counterterrorism. The United States responded by launching the War on Terror and invading Afghanistan in late 2001. The stated goals were to depose the Taliban, which had hosted Al-Qaeda, and to destroy Al-Qaeda's operational base. The Taliban government collapsed quickly, but Al-Qaeda's senior leadership was not fully eliminated. Many members fled, dispersed, or went underground. The war also became much longer and more complex than its initial objectives suggested. Counterterrorism operations expanded across regions, while debates grew over military intervention, civil liberties, detention policies, intelligence practices, and the human costs of war. Al-Qaeda survived by adapting from a centralized organization into a looser network connected through ideology, personal ties, and regional affiliates. In 2003, a U.S.-led coalition invaded Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein's Ba'athist regime. The regime was falsely accused by some officials of having ties to Al-Qaeda, but the invasion itself helped create conditions for a new wave of militant activity. In 2004, Al-Qaeda's Iraqi branch emerged as a major force during the insurgency. This branch became notorious for extreme sectarian violence, especially attacks against Shia Muslims. After 2006, it evolved into the Islamic State of Iraq, a precursor to the later Islamic State group. This history shows how Al-Qaeda's brand and ideology could be adapted by regional actors, sometimes in ways that created rival movements and internal tensions within the broader jihadist landscape. Al-Qaeda's tactics often involved suicide attacks and coordinated bombings intended to overwhelm defenses and produce symbolic impact. The organization used these methods in battle zones and against civilian targets, making it responsible for widespread death and fear. Its leaders understood that terrorism was not only physical violence, but communication through violence. Attacks were meant to provoke governments, recruit sympathizers, intimidate opponents, and dominate media attention. At the same time, these tactics alienated many Muslims around the world, especially when attacks killed civilians or fueled sectarian bloodshed. Al-Qaeda claimed to defend Muslim communities, but its campaigns repeatedly devastated Muslim-majority societies and intensified cycles of war, repression, and instability. After nearly a decade of pursuit, U.S. forces killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan in May 2011. His death was a major symbolic blow, because bin Laden had been Al-Qaeda's most recognizable figure and a central voice in its propaganda. Leadership passed to Ayman al-Zawahiri, an Egyptian militant and longtime strategist. Under al-Zawahiri, Al-Qaeda remained active through regional affiliates, but it struggled with pressure from counterterrorism campaigns, competition from the Islamic State, and difficulty maintaining command over distant branches. By 2021, reports suggested deterioration in its central control over regional operations. In 2022, al-Zawahiri was killed by a U.S. strike, further weakening the old leadership generation. Al-Qaeda's legacy is one of profound and lasting harm. It reshaped global security policy, triggered wars, inspired affiliates, and helped normalize a world of expanded surveillance, airport screening, counterterrorism operations, and international intelligence cooperation. Yet its history also shows the limits of militant movements built on absolutist ideology and mass violence. The organization sought to present itself as a vanguard of global revolution, but its actions brought devastation to civilians across continents, including many in Muslim-majority countries. Today, Al-Qaeda is weaker than at its height, but its ideas and affiliated networks remain part of the broader challenge of violent extremism. Understanding its rise helps explain how conflict, ideology, political grievance, and transnational networks can combine with catastrophic consequences. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.